Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and happy September. I hope that this is a great start of fall. I know technically it hasn't officially started for fall, but September just feels like fall to me, so I'm gonna count it. I'll declare right off the bat that August was a very good reading month for me. I got a lot of reading done, I got some writing done, I got some YouTube work done, my kids went back to school, and I had a few weeks before I started my new job, so I just kind of took advantage of a lot of time. So that being said, I read 13 books in August, which I think is my best reading month so far this year, which is amazing. For some quick book stats, 13 total books for a total of 4,018 pages. The shortest book I read was 120 pages and the longest book was 510. I listened to 5 audiobooks, which is more than I have in quite a while. 1 Kindle book, and I read 7 hard copies, and all the books except for 1 were from the library or Libby, which I love. As for my readings, I had 1 3-bookmark read, 6 4-bookmark reads, 4 5-bookmark reads, and 2 that I left unrated, and I'll be talking more about that in a little bit. But overall, not only did I read a lot of books, but I read a lot of highly rated books. I rated books highly. I read good books in August. So sometimes when I do my wrap-ups, I go from my lowest rated books to my highest rated, but I kind of just want to go in chronological order this month. I don't know why, I just do. So for the first book that I read in August, The Fifth Letter by Nicola Moriarty. Now, Leon Moriarty is one of my favorite authors. I love her writing, and I just found out that she also has a sister who also writes books, so that is Nicola, and this is the first book that I read by her, and I really like this one. I listened to it on audio, and it is about 4 friends from high school, and they used to, back in the day, get together once a year for a vacation and hanging out, spending time together, but kind of as life just went on, some of them got married, some of them had kids, and they hadn't been able to get together for a vacation in a while. So this is the first year in a while that they've been able to do that. One night on their trip, one of them suggests a dare in which they would all write a letter anonymously where they can confess secrets or share life details they were embarrassed to share or whatever they want, and those letters would be read anonymously to the group. As they start reading these letters, secrets are confessed, and the group is kind of trying to figure out who wrote which letter, who believes what, who was angry at who, and what all is going on. One of the friends ends up discovering in the fireplace the remnants of a 5th letter that apparently somebody had written a 2nd letter, and somebody had also tried to burn their letter, but some of it was still there. So they pulled the letter out, and now there's a 5th letter with even more secrets. I was trying to piece together who wrote which letter, who is saying what, who is confessing what, and which narrative am I even reading? Who is the narrator from these portions? It was really well done. I really enjoyed this book, and I gave it 5 bookmarks. The second book I read was Summer of Yes by Courtney Walsh. It was the first Courtney Walsh book that I've read, and I mostly got it because of the title, because I think I've said on this channel before, this is my year of yes, where I'm just taking the time to say yes to opportunities and mostly just be more aware of the things that I have a tendency to say no to and start saying yes to more things. Anyway, so the title of this book really grabbed me. And this is one of the books that I did not rate because nothing really felt quite right. And I'll explain more as I go. The book opens on Kelsey, who wakes up in the hospital after just being hit by a car. She doesn't have time for this, as she has a very busy work schedule, very important deadlines, very important clients to meet, and she needs to meet this client if she wants the chance at keeping her job and hopefully being promoted. She ends up getting a roommate in the hospital, and it is the famous Georgina Tate. Georgina is a bit cantankerous and not the nicest. However, the two of them kind of start to talk, and Kelsey realizes that maybe her accident was actually a wake-up call, and maybe she needs to start thinking about life regrets. Is this how she wants to spend her life? With constant deadlines and constant work and not having the relationships with other people that she would like to have. Enter the idea of the Summer of Yes, where she wants to start saying yes to things and seeing what she can do with her life. She ends up convincing Georgina to join her on this Summer of Yes. So overall, I enjoyed it, and I enjoyed the concept. I enjoyed the questions that it asked, that it brought up, of how you want to live your life, the whole concept of saying yes to things that you would normally say no to, the concept of regrets, taking stock of your life, trying new things. I liked all of those elements. The writing style itself was not my preferred writing style. It just felt kind of a bit more of maybe like a cozy vibe, which tends to just not be my preferred genre, but I just had to keep reminding myself that, you know, this is just a different writing style than what I'm used to. My main dislikes were just how Kelsey was kind of manipulative throughout the book and kind of inserting herself into other people's business that she had no reason inserting herself into. I don't think that worked grammatically, but yeah. There are one or maybe 2 points in the story where she's like, oh wow, this is not my business and maybe I shouldn't be doing this, and she even apologizes, and then she just goes on and keeps doing it. So I didn't love that. And the book kind of presented it as it was supposed to be. It was supposed to be kind of funny, it was supposed to be kind of humorous, and we were supposed to be like, well, even if she's not doing the right thing, it's going to be okay because of how it all works out. And I am glad that things worked out, but I don't think that was the way to go about it. So I did like the book, but there were also elements and kind of key elements that I didn't really like, so that's why it's unrated. I wasn't really sure. I didn't not like it, but I didn't like it. So I don't know, I guess maybe by definition then, that would be maybe a 3 bookmark. I guess, yeah, I'll give it that. The third book I read was You Like It Darker by Stephen King. This was the longest book that I read in August at 510 pages, and it is his newest release, a collection of short stories. There were 12 short stories in this book. Some of them were only 2 or 3 pages, and some were longer, like 40, 50, 60 pages each. My favorite one from this collection was Danny Coughlin's Bad Dream, and it was one of the longer stories. I can't remember exactly how many pages that one was. I was a little nervous just because I have only read 2 Stephen King books before, I think, and I don't like creepy things, so I was a little nervous reading a short story collection because I didn't know like what the stories would be about or how scary or creepy they might get. But overall, they were not too creepy. It was not too much for me. I also really liked The Fifth Step, which was one of the shorter stories in the book, and I really admired the way. Okay, let me complete some thoughts. I don't often read short stories, so I didn't think necessarily that I would like them. But the whole book, honestly, but especially like The Fifth Step, it just made me realize like how much in just a few pages you can actually create a story, which obviously it sounds kind of funny to say, but like, I guess maybe I just kind of had judged short stories before, or just thought, oh, there's not much to them, or there's not much story there. And of course, obviously in only a couple pages, it is much shorter. That's the name, short story. But anyways, I think this whole book just gave me much more of an appreciation for short stories. And yeah, it makes me curious to read some more and maybe try writing some of my own. And yeah, so I really enjoyed this book. I gave it 4 bookmarks overall. The next book I read was an audiobook, and it was How to Human: 3 Ways to Share Life Beyond What Distracts, Divides, and Disconnects Us by Carlos Whitaker. This book has been on my TBR for a little while. I actually follow the author on Instagram, which is where I heard of his book. So when I saw it's available on Libby, I decided to listen to it. It's nonfiction, and as I feel like the title suggests, it's all about how to listen to people, how to see people for their humanity, for who they are, and not just listening for the things we disagree with or the things we don't like, but to really see and connect with people. It's very encouraging, it's very insightful, and in each of his chapters, he includes practical things that we can do beyond just, oh, be a nice person or, whatnot, like practical steps that we can take to be kind to people, to get out of our comfort zones, to love people as people. It was really good. I did give it 5 bookmarks. He is a Christian and he does have religious parts of his book, but I feel like he approaches it in a way that is very approachable, to use the word approachable in 2 ways in one sentence. What? He does have a framework of Christianity that he brings to his book, but I feel like a lot of the takeaways and the practical steps would apply to anybody. Also, I really appreciate his Instagram because he is a person that truly seems to genuinely care about other people. He seems to truly live out seeing people how to be just a kind human being. The next book was another audiobook, and that was Excuse Me While I Ugly Cry by Joya Goffney. I gave this book 4 bookmarks. It's a YA, and I feel like YA is kind of hit or miss for me. Sometimes I've really enjoyed them and sometimes I haven't. I did like this one. The story is about Quinn, a girl in high school who makes a list for everything. And I liked that part because I love journals and notebooks and making lists and writing and all of those things. So I thought that was a fun I like a story that is about lists and writing, so that was fun. But some of these lists Quinn would definitely never want anyone to see. But one day, her notebook gets mixed up with the notebook of somebody else. They had the exact same notebook. They accidentally swapped them. And now this guy has her notebook and he ends up losing it. Later that night, one of her lists gets sent out to the whole school. And she gets a text from an unknown number, and this person is kind of threatening her to say, hey, if you don't start being honest about some of these things on another list in your notebook, I'm going to start revealing more and more pages of your list to everybody. So Quinn has to figure out who to trust amongst her friend group and figure out how to get her notebook back, all while grappling with how to tell the truth about some very important things in her life. And the story itself had a lot of great themes about friendship and relationships and honesty and trust. And yeah, it was a good book. I enjoyed it. Okay, I just realized that one book, I think I might have actually read 14 books in August, because one of these books is not on Goodreads. And so when I went to go look at my list, it was not included. So I'm gonna double check my numbers at some point. But anyways, the next book that I read was Finish Your Story by Colton Iverson. I found Colton's YouTube channel last year during NaNoWriMo, and I have followed him off and on since then. And he recently published this book, Finish Your Story. This is the one book that I did buy. I did not get it from my library, but I think I have my copy downstairs. I really like this book. I feel like a lot of the writing books that I have read tend to have some of the same types of advice, or types of advice, I guess, given. And this book, it did have a lot of the advice that I would expect to see, but it also had more advice, more tips, more strategies. And so I really appreciated that. He talks about things like writer's block, the creative process, writing habits, completing a first draft, things like that. The next book I read was The Night Ends with Fire by KX Song. It's basically a retelling of Mulan, but what I did not know is that it was the first book in a series. So I did not know that until I was almost finished reading this book, and I was like, wait, what? This is not going to be wrapped up. So FYI, it is the first book in a series. And since this one was just published, I will have to wait a while for the second one. So the kingdoms are at war, and Maylin's father is refusing to go. Instead, he decides to marry off Maylin so that he can have the money from the dowry. The man that he intends for her to marry is, to say the least, quite unsavory and abusive. So Maylin decides to run away. She disguises herself as a man and she goes to join the army. While there, she makes friends, she makes an enemy, she makes a possible love interest, she trains, she fights, and there is magic. There are dragons. There are many of the familiar plot points of Mulan, and there are some twists and other elements as well. I really liked it. There are parts of it that I yet have questions on that I'm hoping will be addressed in the second book, and it is at that point that I will decide for sure if I like those elements or not. But for now, I really liked this book, and I do want to read the second book when it comes out. I loved how Maylin grappled with identity, what it means to be a woman, the box that society and family put her in, that she was supposed to exist in as her place as a woman. I like that it talked about real feelings like anger and shame and jealousy. Yeah, I liked it. I gave it 5 bookmarks. This next book, What Kind of Woman? Poems by Kate Baer. This is the 120-page book that I read, the shortest book I read of the month. And it is a book of poetry about womanhood. My favorite poem in this book was Advice for Former Selves. I really liked that one. I was going to read it, but then I realized, copyright. And so I was like, I can't do that. But it is a good poem. I gave it 4 bookmarks. And the only reason I didn't give it 5 is because it wasn't what I was expecting. And now I'm trying to remember what I was expecting prior to starting it. But it was good. I liked it. Next is another audiobook, and that is Annie Bot by Sierra Greer. I've been intrigued by this book for a while. I actually got it from the library several months ago, and I started it, but I was only maybe a chapter in, and I was like, this book I need to be in a different headspace for. So I returned it to the library, and then I decided to listen on audio because I thought that might be a better format for me. And it was. It was a good read, but in some ways a hard read. So my thoughts are still being collected and sorted. So we'll see how this goes without taking a very long time to talk about the book. But first, I'm just gonna read the description on Goodreads because, yes, my brain is still sorting. Annie Bot was created to be the perfect girlfriend for a human owner, Doug. Designed to satisfy his emotional and physical needs, she has dinner ready for him every night, wears the cute outfits he orders for her, and adjusts her libido to suit his moods. True, she's not the greatest at keeping Doug's place spotless, but she's trying to please him. She's trying hard. She's learning too. Doug says he loves that Annie's artificial intelligence makes her seem more like a real woman, but the more human Annie becomes, the less perfectly she behaves. As Annie's relationship with Doug grows more intricate and difficult, she starts to wonder whether Doug truly desires what he says he does. In such an impossible paradox, what does Annie owe herself? This book was kind of triggering. I have mentioned before that I grew up in a religious cult, and this book hit closer to home. I was going to say than I expected. That's not true. That's why I returned it to the library, because I was like, I think this is going to be a lot, which it was. Now, obviously, I did not grow up in a cult with robots or like these exact scenarios, but I think the fact that the author took, like, it wasn't supposed to be, oh, a one-to-one, this is real life. It's supposed to be kind of speculative, kind of futuristic, kind of unrealistic. But I think that those things kind of made it hit home even more. Like, if you take it out of the reality and you put it into something that seems like so different, it highlights the parts that don't make sense even more. As I said, I'm still trying to sort through my thoughts. Does that make sense? It felt very real in many ways. The expectations being put on Annie, what she was there for, what she was allowed to do, the way that Doug treated her, the way he manipulated her and used her for whatever he wanted, how Annie's purpose was her cleaning or her body or otherwise keeping Doug happy. Even how Doug framed it so nicely sometimes, and he seemed so nice and sweet and caring sometimes. And yet, even in those moments, it was gross manipulation and the power that he had over her. The scenes where Annie is just trying to figure out how to please Doug. What can I do? Trying to read his emotions and figure out how is he feeling right now? What does he need from me? What can I do? Did I do this wrong? And like all of these, it felt very real. As I was reading, I honestly thought of many specific things that I have heard people say about women in the specific cult and culture that I grew up in, but also even today, I follow a lot of organizations and groups of people who are trying to raise awareness and call out abuse that are in a lot of church cultures. And some of these things, like, it feels so futuristic when you think about it as robots, but so many of these core themes are real life for so many people, and not just in cults or more extreme things. The expectations placed upon Annie, what was expected of her, what was required of her, how she was expected to act and behave and think, and how she was expected to know all of Doug's desires and preferences and goals and all of these things. So many people have to live that way. So many people have moral and theological pressure put on them to live that way. And it's not even just niche extreme groups. It can even be mainstream. And some of it is even society in general, like even mainstream society, not religious. There's still expectations and boxes that so many people like women to stay in. And so this book brought up a lot of things. Most of the reviews that I've seen about this book bring up how one of the themes of the book is just humanity. What makes a person human? And I agree. I definitely think that is one of the themes. What constitutes humanity? What does it mean to be human? What does it mean to have a human connection with another person? And I loved those themes. I loved the thoughts and the conversations that is sparking, that this book is bringing up and sparking. I loved the way that it so poignantly showed and highlighted women's roles, women's place, societal expectations, religious I mean, it didn't talk about religion, but because of my background, like that was like, oh, that's, that hits close to home. I'm about to get emotional over a book about a robot. I love a story about a woman or a robot recognizing their own power, recognizing their own voice, recognizing their own worth, and taking steps to recognize their own humanity and their own worth. So this is a very good book. It's not very long, but it brings up so many great themes, so many great points. It was very thought-provoking. I really liked it, but it was a lot. I think I gave it 5 bookmarks. So moving along. Next to You by Hannah Bonham Young. This is a romance book and the first book that I have read by this author. I wanted to try something new and it seemed like it could be a quick, easy, fun read. Pretty early on, I realized it probably would also be quite spicy, and indeed it was. The story opens on Lane, a woman who is not entirely sure what she's doing with her life or what she wants from life. Relationships, career, family, none of it is really looking like what she expected her life to look like at her age. One night, she makes an impulse purchase and she buys a school bus, a big, bright yellow school bus that she decides to renovate so that she can live out of her bus. Enter her friend Matt, who is a mechanic. And incidentally enough, he's also quite attractive and they have unbelievable chemistry. Lane knows that it can't or shouldn't go anywhere, and she does her best to ignore the feelings that she has. Of course, one thing leads to another, and they end up recognizing that they both have feelings for each other, and they decide to try it, and you know, all these things. Lane wants to keep things at one level, but Matt might just have deeper feelings. And underneath it all, Lane might too. She just first needs to confront a lot of things about herself and her life and her family. She ends up working through a lot of her own feelings, a lot of family things, a lot of her own parts of her past and her baggage that she realizes are holding her back. So this book was also an unrated book. I couldn't quite decide. I did really like it, but it was also spicier than I think is my preferred spice level, or at least for that season, for that era of my reading. I'm such a mood reader, so I didn't end up giving it a rating. I don't know. I guess if I had to pick right now, I would probably say 3.75 bookmarks. That's what I'll say. Okay, I am now joined by my cat, Dickens, so we'll see what he does. Okay. The next book I read was The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. This was actually the book club pick for July. I got in line for it at the library at the end of June, I think, but my name didn't come up until the end of July, so I didn't get, or actually beginning of August, so I didn't even get to start reading it until August. Anyways, I finally read it. I had read some other books by Lucy Foley, and I had thought that she just wasn't for me, but I actually really liked this book. It has a possibly darker feeling, a darker vibe than some of her other books, so there were a couple times where I was like, oh, I'm not quite sure where this is going, but I found myself really enjoying the darker elements, which kind of surprised me, but I also liked it. It still was not too creepy because, again, I don't do super creepy. So it was the perfect level for me. It was good. I now have to hold my laptop because my cat claimed my lap. Okay, I'm gonna read the Goodreads description on this as well. It's the opening night of the manor and no expense, large or small, has been spared. The infinity pool sparkles, crystal pouches for guests' healing have been placed in the seaside cottages and woodland hutches. The Manor Mule cocktail, grapefruit, ginger, vodka, and a dash of CBD oil is being poured with a heavy hand. Everyone is wearing linen. But under the burning midsummer sun, darkness stirs. Old friends and enemies circulate among the guests. Just outside the manor's immaculately kept grounds, an ancient forest bristles with secrets. And the Sunday morning of opening weekend, the local police are called. Something's not right with the guests. There's been a fire. A body's been discovered. I was so intrigued. I was so invested. If you want a thriller that has some darker undertones, but it's still not creepy, this is a good one. I gave it 4 bookmarks. The next book is What the River Knows by Isabel Ibanez. This was the August pick for my book club. This was also the first in a series, so I have now so many series that I have started. The second book in this series, I think, comes out in November. I think it's sometime pretty soon. So, Inez has grown up in the 19th century, mostly being raised by her aunt. Her parents spend most of their time in Egypt. Sorry, I just realized like this shoulder is way far down. That's because, again, the cat is in my lap and I'm trying to balance my computer in one hand. So if I'm super lopsided, that's why. Okay, let's do this better. Her parents spend most of their time in Egypt on an archaeological site, and she's always asking if she can join them, and they always say no. At the beginning of the book, she finds out that her parents have died, and so she sneaks out and she travels to Egypt by herself to try to get answers and figure out what is going on. She meets up with her uncle at the archaeological sites, and her uncle ends up being quite angry to see her and refuses to answer any of her questions. He tries to send her home, and she refuses to go home because she wants to know what's going on. So throughout the book, Inez is fighting for her right to stay. She is trying to demand answers about what really happened with her parents. She's trying to figure out what this magic is that she can feel and sense in her memories and in some of the objects that she finds. And she's even hoping that she can help discover the tomb of Cleopatra. I gave this book 3 bookmarks. I enjoyed the premise. I am fascinated by aspects of archaeology, and I really liked those scenes, like when they were at the sites and finding the artifacts and all of those things. I thought that was really cool. Unfortunately, for me, I did not feel personally invested in the characters or the why, I guess, of the story. So much of it, maybe even all of it, I feel like could have been resolved with one conversation. And I just don't tend to love plots like that. I feel like the story tried to address the why, like why could they not have that conversation? But it wasn't compelling enough for me to get behind that why for the rest of the plot to kind of hit home for me, if that makes sense. So I'm still undecided if I'm gonna read the second one. It's not a definite no, but it's also not a definite yes. Okay, and the last book, we're so close to being done, was another audiobook, and that was The Collected Regrets of Clover by Mickey Brammer. This was a beautiful story. The main character is named Clover, and she is a death doula. So she is hired to be with a person in their final weeks or days or hours of their life. And after working in this job for a number of years, she's collected various notebooks. She has a notebook where she's listed out regrets that people have told her on their deathbeds, with advice that people have given her. And as a way to honor some of these people that she has worked with, if she's able to, she tries to do some things in their honor. Like if somebody had a regret that they did not eat a certain food, then she will go out and have that meal in their honor. Or if they did not get to do or experience something, Clover will try to incorporate that into her life somehow. Clover spends so much time doing her job that she hasn't really developed much of her own life, her own social circle, or things like that. Plus, because of her job, a lot of people haven't really known how to respond when she tells people her job. So she's kind of lost a lot of friends, / a lot of people haven't wanted to get to know her. And because of a lot of what she has gone through herself, she hasn't necessarily wanted to get to know a lot of other people. The story is about the lives of these people that she has interacted with. And it's also about her taking these collected regrets and realizing how she wants to live her life. It's a very beautiful story. I gave this one 5 bookmarks. Okay, this is probably going to be one of my longest videos ever, so I'm going to try to briefly talk about my TBR for September. So the first book is the book club pick, and that is called Maelstrom, Manhood Swept into the Currents of a Changing World by Carolyn Custis James. I am also going again for Us Against You by Frederick Buckman. I was going to do it as a buddy read with my friend Kristen at Kristen Joy Reads on Instagram, but we both said it might be better to bump that book to September. So we are trying again for that buddy read. I'm excited to jump into that. The third book is The Mercies, and I'm actually picking it up from the library this afternoon, and that is the book that I'll be reading with Ellen at the Ellen Made Book Club. That was one of her book month picks. That was one of the picks for the book club for the month of September. So I'm going to be reading that along with her. And then, can you even believe it? I am going to be getting back to my wrapped physical TBR list. I am very excited. I have on here the numbers for my wrapped TBR. So I'm going to pull one out and then we will open it and see what it is, because this is only my 3rd month trying it. One book was a DNF and the second one is a soft DNF. So this, I've got to start marking books off my list. Okay. Let's see what it's going to be. I'm nervous. Okay, number 11. Let's see what it's a thin one. Oh, I'm nervous. What is this? I truly don't know. I'm excited. My best friend gave this to me. I'm excited. I have to tell you something. It's a book of poetry. And look at the cover. That's really cool. Dearest reader, these words were written to give you a space to untangle the strings of your heart. I'm very excited. And in the table of contents, there's a section for soft truths and a section for hard truths. I'm very excited. This is gonna be good. And I've been wanting to read another poetry book this month, so this will be perfect. So that was my very productive reading month for August. September, I have 4 books for sure. I'm gonna focus on those. Last month, I had so many books come available on my library holds all at once. Hopefully this month will slow down. But if I get a whole bunch, I am already gonna decide now that I'm going to go ahead and decide to return some of them because I want a slower month and I'm starting a new job. So let me know, what was your favorite book from August? What are you most looking forward to reading in September? When do you consider fall to start? Do you agree that it feels like fall has arrived or not yet? And until next time, happy reading. This was the 510 page, later that I got in line for it. Sorry, I have cat fur on me now.